Hi guys, and welcome to Learn Extra Live. Welcome, it's finally life science. I know that's one of your favorite subjects, and Kathy is with me today. How are you, Kathy?
I'm fine, darling. Did you have a good Easter break?
I had a fantastic Easter break.
Okay, good. It was Pesach as well.
Yes,
So to all our Pesach learners and all our Christian learners, happy Easter. And yeah, I hope you had lots and lots and lots of hot cross buns because they're delicious. Doesn't matter what religion you are.
Yeah, and had a little bit of a rest, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I wish I had school holidays. But anyway, my time is over. But I'm back with you guys, and I see we're chatting about animal tissue today.
Yeah, animal tissue for our grade 10s.
Yeah, tell us more about it, Kathy.
Okay,
Little
guys and
synopsis.
girls, let's go across.
Let's go straight to it.
Yeah, let's start straight to it. We're looking at animal tissue, all right? And with animal tissue, what are we doing? We're looking at what we are, because remember, everything gets classified into plant cells and animal cells. So we have, if you have a cell wall, you're a plant. If you have no cell wall and just a cell membrane, you're an animal cell. And if you're a virus, you're nothing, because they haven't classified them as animals or plants. They they don't even know if they classify as living or non-living. So they sort of don't even fall into the whole classification process. So today we're looking at animal cells. And when we look at animal cells, we know that with animal tissue, and just so that we can recap the difference between cells, tissue, etc., is that you start off with organelles. The organelles, nucleus, mitochondria, your little structures, ribosome, and all those things in the cell. All of that is encompassed in a cell membrane, all right? That makes, so it's the organelles in the cell. Lots of cells make tissue. And lots of layers of tissue will make an organ. And many organs make up a system. And all our systems in our body will make us the organism. So, let's say we have cardiac cells. Those little cardiac cells will make layers of tissue, which will eventually make up the heart. Now, the heart, what is it? It's just the pump. But the heart forms part of different organs that make up the circulatory system. So you have the heart, you have all the blood vessels, you have all the different valves and the structures that make up our circulatory system. And we put all of that together, and what do we end up with? The circulatory system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, the skeletal system, and we put all of that together, and we have us, the organism. So we're looking specifically at plant tissue. Now I just want to check that I've got a color here. Let's go with, did I say plant? I think, people, forgive me, animal tissue. So now we look at the different types of animal tissue. We look at epithelium. Now, epi always means on top, okay? Always. So your epithelial tissue will always line any cavity that is in contact with substances from outside or substances from the body going outside. So that will be your epithelial tissue, and we'll go through them. You've got squamous, which is squashed. They're squashed flat little cells. We've got columnar. Just the word tells you they're like little columns, so they're going to be long cells. We've got ciliated. Now, you know cilia as when it's got those finger-like projections that move. And girls, we have ciliated epithelium in, for example, the fallopian tubes to move the little egg along. All right? We've got cuboidal, cube shape. That's why it's called cuboidal. And they are also glandular cells. Why? Because they are going to produce the enzymes and all the different things in our body that's produced by glands. So your cuboidal cells make up your glandular cells, but cuboidal cells can also be found in, for example, the tubules of the kidney, where they've got to make sure that active and passive transport is taking place. Your cuboidal cells have lots and lots of mitochondria, but we'll get to the detail just now. Then we look at connective tissue. So epithelium is always lining. It's the top layer. Connective, well, we have what we call connectivity. And you at the moment are hopefully posting questions to Indy on Facebook. You can only do that if you have connectivity, which means you are connected. And that's what connective tissue is. It connects things. So we've got areola and white fibrous and yellow elastic and cartilage, and we have bone and we have blood. And you say, now hold on, blood, how can that be connective tissue? It's sort of, what's blood? It's made up of a whole bunch of cells and plasma and blah, blah, blah. How can it be classified as connective tissue? It is, because it flows in the blood vessels that connect everything in our body. All right, then we look at muscle tissue. All right, and with our muscle tissue, we have 3 types of muscle tissue. We have smooth muscle. That's the tissue that you cannot control. So that will be the tissue that your glands are actually made of, the main part of your glands. And your entire endocrine system would be smooth muscle tissue, but also your organs, smooth muscle in many cases. Then you have striated. So your striated muscle is all your skeletal muscle. It's the muscle that helps you to move your body to where you want to go, to be able to bend forwards and backwards and do all the things and pick things up. It's because of the striated muscle. It's your skeletal muscle. And then cardiac muscle, anything that's cardiac has to do with the heart. It's the thing that pumps the blood throughout your body. Nerve tissue. The 2 main types of nerve tissue are your sensory neurons and your motor neurons. Sensory neurons pick up from your senses. They convey impulses to the central nervous system, which is the spinal cord and the brain. And your motor neurons cause movement, because remember, motor means move. So your motor neurons will then transmit from the brain or the spinal cord, or both, because remember, your spinal cord's like a highway. So it's like the main highway between your brain and the rest of your body. So what it does is it will then convey the information from the brain and the spinal cord everywhere else in the body. So sensory from the senses to the brain, motor from the brain and the spinal cord to the rest of the body. So that in a nutshell is your animal tissue. If I was you, I would take something like this. I would take 2 A4 pages and, 2 normal exam pad pages, stick them together so you've got a double page, and on there you would put animal tissue and you'd write these 4 kinds of animal tissue. And where I've got each of these points, you would then leave space next to it. Put a little diagram there and what it does, where it's found and what it does. And you learn that as one big sheet. And I promise you that summarizes this entire chapter on one big double page, people. Easy to learn. Use colors, all right? Write your headings in black, and then use color to write the rest of the information. Don't use yellow, though. So if you go to one of the supermarket stores and you get yourself a pack of 10 Cokies, those fine liner Cokies, take the yellow and throw it away and use the rest. And I promise you now, that's the way to learn. Stick it up on the back of the toilet door, all right? What do you do when you're in the toilet? You just sit and you stare at the door or the tiles. Here, you'll have something to learn and increase your learning and your achievement and your success rate. You must know this. And it's something you can confuse very easily. And it's difficult to remember all these different types of cells. But if you've put them there and you're looking at them, maybe next to the mirror in your bedroom. So you make a rule. Before you're allowed to look in the mirror, you have to read your page, or at least one column on the page. You follow. Or the fridge, another very good one, especially for the boys. Hey, Indy,
Yeah.
you know how boys always eat everything. You know, if it isn't nailed down, they will eat it. All right, so before you can do anything in that fridge, you must first read one aspect of your table.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. You know what it does, though, Indy? A person ends up learning without really putting effort
Realizing,
into it.
yeah.
And after a week, you've got one up behind the toilet, you've got one next to your mirror, you've got one
Eventually
on
you're
the
so
fridge.
sick and tired of the animal tissue.
You just move them around so that they all get equal spacing in a week or 2 weeks, and you know it off by heart.
Yeah.
You know?
It's clever. Guys,
Yeah.
do it.
All right, here we look at our first lot, our epithelial tissue. And your basic epithelial tissue here, we'd be looking at squamous. So let's just see if we've got a nice bright color here. We're looking at this epithelial tissue is squamous. Now, if you look at the word squamous epithelium, it is squashed. It's squished like that. If you see it from the top, it looks like a honeycomb. And if you see it from the side, it's on a basal membrane like that. Okay? And then the cell will come up, and it's got a little lift here where the nucleus is, and then flat. And then you'll have another one and a little lift where the nucleus is. So we've got the nucleus there, and we have a nucleus there, and it's all on a basal membrane. And that's what's very important, is that all epithelial tissue is on a base membrane. So here, where you've got the nucleus here, there's your nucleus over here, and what they're showing you there is the cell membrane, and the same you would have the cell membrane over there. All right. What's very important is your squamous is very thin. Now, if you use your common sense and think, where would we need really thin tissue? If you take homeopathic medicine, what do you do with homeopathic medicine? Indeed, have you ever taken homeopathic medicine?
I do, actually.
What do you do? Where do you put it?
In my mouth.
That's
drops on my
right.
tongue.
Drops on your tongue.
Or those little salts.
Those little salts and those little white
Yeah.
tablety things you put on your tongue or under your tongue. And what do? You
Let them
work
dissolve.
it with your saliva, and then you swallow it. But a lot of the goodness is absorbed into the mouth. When people, very often, I shouldn't say very often, when people do drugs, one way, instead of sniffing it, which is also because you've got a lot of squamous epithelial and ciliated columnar epithelium in your nasal cavities, taking and rubbing it in at the top of the gums over here, it absorbs very quickly into the body. So really, really very absorptive. So therefore, the mouth. But also remember something else. If you hurt your mouth, if you bite your tongue, you bite the inside of your cheek, whatever the case is, what happens? The next morning, it's better. Unless you've really hacked it with your tooth, then maybe it takes 2 days. But it's sorted. It heals very quickly. Why? To replace the outer layer, it's one cell layer. So it's quick mitosis, whoops, and we're fixed. Okay, so the mouth is where you'd find squamous epithelium. You'd find squamous epithelium in the alveoli of the lungs. Now, what do you have to do there? That little alveoli is a tiny, tiny, tiny little, looks like a grape. And on the inside, it's this empty bag so that gases can come in and out. That's why you breathe. But when the oxygen's there, you need that oxygen to get across into the capillaries as quickly as possible. And to get out of those capillaries, the carbon dioxide from the blood through the capillary wall, that single layer of endothelium, through the squamous epithelium and zhoops out so we can breathe it out. Again, so easy diffusion. So alveoli of the lungs. The rectum of the digestive system. That's why when people use suppositories, they work so effectively, because of all that squamous and the absorptive tissue there. So people, the main one is your mouth. And these little cells, because they're so little, you can take your nail or a sort of a rounded toothpick, and you can actually do this, just a quick zip of the inside of your mouth. You won't even feel it. There's no pain. Take that, you tip it onto a slide, you put a tiny little bit of color into it, or dye, whichever dye your teacher uses. You put your cover slip over the top and have a look, and you'll be able to see your squamous epithelial cells. Nice little shapes. If you look at them from the side, that's what they'll look like. But you must remember your squamous epithelium. Okay, it's so nice. Whoever did these slides for me didn't put what they were. So it's epithelial tissue. Let's just make sure we put it here. And this would be your columnar epithelium. Or you can say columnar epithelial tissue, but columnar epithelium, you write it quicker, it's easier to say it shorter. All right? So what have we got here? There are our cells. Along the bottom here, you are going to find, in fact, I need to get a nice big fat color here. So let's do that one. No, man. Where am I here? Come, come, come. There we go. Where I've done this here, that's where your basal membrane will be, because remember, what is one of the very special things about your epithelial tissue? It's always on a base membrane. So there's your base membrane in yellow. Here are your little columnar cells. That will be one cell. There you've got the nucleus. And this is one cell. So all the cells are next to each other. They have a column shape. Also note that the nucleus is at the bottom of the cell. It's always on the bottom, close to the bottom of the cell. And then what have we got? We've got all these little things that are sticking up here. They look like little potato heads. I mean, all we really have to do is put little eyes in here and a little nose, and there's the mouth. All right, so what have we got at the end of the day? We've got our cilia, and they will increase the surface area, they will make movements, and if it's found in the small intestine, we don't call them cilia, we call them microvilli. Let me just take that out, microvilli. And what they do is they increase that surface area. Remember, anything with a fold, there's going to be an increased surface area for absorption.
Kathy?
And then, in the middle, yeah.
What? And I hate to interrupt you.
No.
You know I hate it. We have to take a little break.
Okay,
But we're going to do that now. Guys, keep watching, keep watching. Kathy's got lots to chat about. You know how Kathy goes. She gets in there and she explains everything so wonderfully and so beautifully. Guys, chat to us on facebook.com/learnextra. Also on Twitter @learnextra. And we'll see you now right after this break. Hi guys, and welcome back to Learn Extra Live. It is grade 10 life science, and I'm so glad you're joining in. We are going over animal tissue today, and it's all very exciting. Guys, I just wanted to let you know, chat us on facebook.com/learnextra, also on Twitter @learnextra. Kashifa, Stephanie, I know that you guys are joining in and you're getting involved. Please, please, please make sure when you post questions they are relating to the topic that Kathy is going over. That means in the last 15 minutes of the show, when we go over the questions, we can do them quick, fast, and easy and get everyone's questions answered, because that's how we like to roll. Without further ado, I think we're going straight to Kathy. Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, doll. Okay, let's just finish off here. So our columnar epithelium, they're column-like in structure. The nucleus is always at the bottom of the cell. You have cilia or microvilli, and this red line here, okay, that you can see over there, that is your goblet cell. Now, you know the old days, they used to have goblets, and the goblets contained liquid. Now, in this case, your goblet cell secretes mucus. All right, that's its main function, is to produce mucus. Now, think about mucus. Think about where you would need mucus. Come on. Many of you, we're now heading into winter. all right? And, I mean, if you remember in November, remember November. Whoa.
You're a
I'm going to
poet and
start rapping here.
you're a poet and you don't know it.
There we go. Indy had bronchitis when we were sitting doing the matric revision. And every time she wanted to cough, she'd start to go, and we'd take an ad break when it was really bad, and then she would cough her lungs out. Where did all that mucus come from? From the bronchi, because you have the trachea. Trachea splits into bronchi, into the lungs, and the bronchi split into bronchioles. Now, when the doctor tells you you have bronchitis, you are making an immense amount of mucus in your bronchi. Why? Because there are germs, there are bacteria there that are messing up your cells. So what happens? The body says, okay, fine. How are we going to do this? We're going to put out a whole lot of mucus so we can brush and get rid of all these bad things and get them out of the body. So you end up coughing up the phlegm. And that's why your grannies and your doctors and your nurses will tell you when you want to cough up phlegm, cough it up into a tissue, spit it out. Don't swallow it. Because when you swallow it, you're filling your stomach with all this dead, half-decaying, yucky green mucus, which is full of all kinds of bugs. Just cough it up and cough it out. All right? And that's also why we take medication like bronchodilators, because a bronchodilator will open up the bronchi so that you can breathe easier, so it dilates it, and it also reduces the production of the phlegm or mucus, which is produced by the goblet cells. So where would we find these cells? We'd find them, as I said to you, the microvilli in the small intestine, where you are going to be absorbing nutrients, but also in the trachea and the bronchi going into lungs, and also to a certain degree in the larger bronchioles. Why? To clean, to absorb, to make mucus because of the goblet cells. Next one. Here we look at this kind of epithelial. Now, really, people, look at the shape. This would be your glandular epithelium. Okay? And your glandular epithelium, what would you have? That would be your normal epithelial cell. It would probably be a cuboidal cell. Cuboidal cell. All right. In fact, it would be the cuboidal cell nucleus if I must actually catch a wake up here. And this would be my cuboidal cell. And the bottom here, around that point there, is your base membrane. So in this case, your base membrane goes all the way around here, like that. All right? And what are we producing in between here? You're going to have your goblet cells producing whatever structure it is, hormones, enzymes, mucus, to get it out to where it's got to go. Next cell. Okay, now we go on to connective tissue. What we did do there, let me just add this, is clearly when they did the transfer from my PowerPoint, they didn't put in the cuboidal cell. So if we look at cuboidal epithelium, all right, it's got, cuboidal comes from the word cube. So it has a cube shape. So there's your base membrane, and you'd have these little squarish type structures like that that have a nucleus. And you could also get ciliated cuboidal epithelium, which in that case would mean that it has cilia. But what cuboidal cells have, which is very special, is they have lots of mitochondria. Now, can you remember what the role was of mitochondria in a cell? Come on. I want to know. Indy, are they answering yet?
Nope, they're not answering.
What is
Guys,
the role
start
of the
answering.
mitochondria in the cell? The mitochondria will use oxygen, which is why we need to breathe, and glucose, which is why we need to eat, and during a process called cellular respiration, the mitochondria will use the glucose and use the oxygen. Okay, can you remember? What does it do? It uses those two substances to produce carbon dioxide, water. Let's write it here, glucose plus oxygen in the mitochondria of the cell to produce carbon dioxide and water. And the whole reason we have cellular respiration is to produce ATP. And ATP is adenosine triphosphate, which means you have an adenosine and 3 phosphate molecules. And I've explained this to you with the energy trapped in the bond between the adenosine and the phosphates. So ATP is an energy carrier. And if the cuboidal epithelium have a lot of energy and a lot of mitochondria to produce energy, it means that they work very hard wherever we are going to have active transport. People remember, active transport is the movement of a molecule or a substance from a low concentration to a high concentration. Against that, it's going uphill, against that concentration gradient, all right? And what does it need? It needs the carrier molecule. Okay, do you remember that? And that carrier molecule needs energy, just like you do if you were to carry a skateboard uphill. And that was that diagram that I drew here, we actually put onto the Facebook web page for you at the time. So active transport, the movement of a substance from a lower concentration to a higher concentration against the concentration gradient. And what do we need? We need a carrier molecule and energy to walk up the hill. All right, so that's your cuboidal cells. Now let's move on. And something's just gone very strange here.
Oh no. Gremlins.
Move you. No. Done. There we go. All right. Now we go on to connective tissue. Now remember, connective tissue joins stuff together. It connects, like connectivity. So here we have our white fibrous tissue, and its main function is it is a shock absorber. It is found in tendons, and it is flexible. Now, people, where will we find a tendon? Now, remember, tendons attach our striated muscle to bone so that we can move our muscles. Just think, you have your Achilles tendon at the back here, and you must have watched the movie Achilles. All right, and Helen of Troy, and all those good, wonderful, I can see Indy going, yes, yes, yes. Okay, and with Achilles, they finally cut his Achilles heel.
I heard it's very painful.
And that's what they used to do in those days. I mean, they're very, very
Apparently
cruel.
it snaps. When you cut your Achilles tendon, it snaps and it
and
jumps
your,
up your
and
leg.
your calf is going to pull right up into a ball over here. Because
sounds lovely.
Your tendons will always hold muscle to bone, where your ligaments hold your bone to your bone, so that you don't end up being like a puppet. All right, you can actually move everything.
Then Kathy, with your tendons, like when you have tendinitis, does that happen only between the joints?
Yeah. It's, remember, yes, it has to, because your tendons hold the bone to the bone.
So it's anywhere.
It's going to, tendinitis means that the tendon itself, remember, it's living tissue. I mean, look here. You've got your fibers, you've got your lacuna, you've got your chondrocytes. Those are little structures that are there to, they're living cells. Okay? So when your tendons become inflamed, okay, and especially when we have our synovial fluid, then we say, oh, we've got tendinitis, which just means it's very tender in the tendons. All right, then you take an anti-inflammatory and like Voltaren or Cataflam, and you end up with a very sore stomach if you do not eat first. All right, I'm sure you've had that too. But people, so you've got your lacuna, which is this little structure here, and you've got your little cells there. All right. Come. No, why does it keep doing this? Okay, this board and I are going to still have a big fight. Again, now we have our yellow elastic tissue, and this is very strong. But it has a certain degree of flexibility, and where we're going to find it? We're going to find it in our ligaments. In other words, it holds bone to bone. All right? And we find it in the epiglottis. Now, I hope you know where the epiglottis is. And very often, when you look at guys, the epiglottis and the structure on the other side of the epiglottis is more prominent than in girls. Okay? And so, have you still got a clue on what the epiglottis is? Come, Indy, do you know? And
I'm trying to remember from school. Okay, no, I know. I know this because it's the thyroid. The epiglottis. Is this not?
Yeah, okay. Sort of there. Okay,
Kathy's going, yes,
what you've
kind
got,
of.
the thyroid gland sits here like a bow tie. So if we were to wear a bow tie, the thyroid would be around about here. But if you take your fingers, take 2 fingers and rub your throat here, can you feel that there are like circles around here?
So it's your Adam's apple.
Wait, get in there.
Sorry!
You take your 2 fingers, put them here, and swallow. And when you swallow, you find your Adam's apple goes cloops and then down. And what that is your tongue sits here. And as you swallow, your tongue pushes the epiglottis down, and that's what lifts your Adam's apple up. But what is the epiglottis? It's a little flap made up of yellow elastic cartilage, sits there, or tissue, sits there, and it closes your breathing pipe, your wind pipe. In other words, your trachea. Your trachea has an opening, which is where your larynx is, which is your voice box. Okay? So that opening has to be closed when you swallow, otherwise what's going to happen? You're going to get food down your breathing pipe. And what happens when that happens? We go and we call what we call choke. So how do we prevent that? The Adam's apple, and on the other end of the Adam's apple is the epiglottis, which closes the opening to the trachea completely. All right, and that opening to the trachea is called the glottis. So epi on top, glottis. Epiglottis closes the glottis. Do you know now?
I do, and I actually remembered it. I'm sure I learned it when I was at school before I didn't take biology.
If you ever watched that program, Lie to Me, or if any of you have watched
all those medical shows, ER,
yes,
all of those,
or read up about body behavior and the way what people do when they're moving their bodies in a certain way. Are they lying? Are they telling the truth? Are they anxious? Check whether they're sweating. If your boyfriend tells you he loves you, does he really mean it, or is he a con artist? If your girlfriend says to you she's actually SMSing a friend of hers when she's actually SMSing your friend, right? All those things. How do you tell whether someone's lying, whether they're being honest, whether they're being open and upfront? One of the signs of lying or nervous is nervousness. And one of the signs of nervousness, Indiana, is swallowing, because you end up with a very dry mouth. And that dry mouth is because of adrenaline. So the way we behave and how we respond, all those things. But Adam's apple moving, the epiglottis moving up and down, moving that made of yellow elastic cartilage, is when you lie or you're uncomfortable, people start to swallow, especially when they know they're in big trouble. All right, so what we're going to have here are our fibers. Again, we have our little chondrocytes here. Those are the little cells that make all the stuff that works in here, and then it has its little lacunar structure. All right. come. Okay. Then we go to cartilage, which is absolutely strong. It's flexible. Strong, flexible. Now, there's the trachea. We've just spoken about the epiglottis, and the epiglottis closes the glottis, which is the opening to the trachea when you swallow. Okay? Adam's apple up, epiglottis down, and it closes so that the food slides down the esophagus. Right, now we look at the trachea. And if you feel, take your fingers, and I said rub them up and down your throat, and you'll feel, and I can see my best pupil here doing it as well.
It feels so funny.
And it's got like ridges. So what you've got is, if you look at the structure from like that, there's your trachea, and it's got these C-shaped cartilage rings around it like that. And they are definitely C-shaped. They open at the back. Now, why do we have the C-shaped cartilage rings? Because they keep the trachea open. Can you imagine if your trachea folded like a straw? Okay, you would not be able to breathe. We want to keep this airway open and very comfortable. All right, so what do? We make sure that we have these C-shaped cartilage rings, but you have your esophagus, which is your food pipe, just behind it. And that must be able to stretch into the trachea when we're not breathing or when we swallow. That's why you don't breathe when you swallow. And I think
amazing.
Going for an ad break.
Let's do that. While we go to the ad break, guys, I just wanted to let you know that we will be posting all of the diagrams and everything that Kathy's been talking about during the show onto the page now, so keep an eye out for that. Also wanted to let you know, chat to us on Twitter and on Facebook. It's very quiet at Learn Extra. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/Learn Extra. And we've only got about, I think, 15 minutes left to the show when we come back, if we even do. So guys, get those questions in so we can go through them in the last 5 to 10 minutes of the show. See you now after the break. Hi guys, and welcome back to Learn Extra Live. This is Life Science, and we are still in grade 10. We're moving into the last section of our show, so guys, please get your questions in on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Learn Extra. And without further ado, Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, Han. All right, people, something else that I really need for you to remember is that your ribs, your sternum, attaching to the sternum from your ribs going in here, and also your false ribs and your floating ribs, those are all, a lot of it is just cartilage. So the connection to here is all made of cartilage. And then also at the joint ends, so every single joint that you have around the bone, so that where the two bones are, you've got cartilage. And the reason for the cartilage is so that the two ends don't rub too badly and hurt and get damaged. Right. Also, I mean, if you think here, when you do this and you move your leg around, and the ball and socket joints, all your different synovial joints, but every bone that you have, especially your synovial joints, are going to have the cartilage around the bone, and also within the socket, and on the opposing bone, if you've got gliding joints, etc. Why? So that they don't rub and there isn't friction and it doesn't damage the bone. Okay, now we move on to connective tissue still, and our connective tissue here, we're looking at bone tissue. Now, having spoken about bones, this is what we have. The little structures here are osteocytes, where you had chondrocytes to make up your elastic and your white and yellow and cartilage structures, tissue. You have your chondrocytes. Here you've got osteocytes. And this is where the word osteoporosis comes from. It's when those little osteocytes, those little structures that are in the bone, the little actual living cells, when they die. And when they die, you end up with a little cavity which has nothing in it. And then the bone ends up becoming porous, and it breaks very easily. All right? Now, what does the bone tissue do? Well, people, look, it protects. It provides structure and support. Because if we didn't have a skeleton, we wouldn't have anything to attach our muscles to. You follow? So you've got to remember that the bones give us our structure. If a person has a big structure, or when you get some girls that are like your Amazonian type girls, they like big girls, they say she's got a big bone structure. Or your baseball players, they're big guys, they're huge, they're 7, 8 foot tall. All right, why? Well, 2 meters. Okay, they are big boned. They have large bone structure. Your bone structure gives you what you are. All right, and that's because of genetics. You cannot change your bone structure. If you're a little shorty and you think you get your brother or your sister or your mom or your dad to tie you up and tie your feet to the end of your bed and your hands to the top of your bed so they can draw and quarter you, and you're going to stretch yourself to get taller, it's not going to happen. All right, your bone structure is your bone structure. So, protects and support. The protection, well, think of your rib cage. What does it protect? Well, hello, your heart and your lungs, all right, and your liver, because your liver sits like right here. And your pelvic bones are going to protect your ovaries and the reproductive, for the males, the reproductive systems. Why? Because it's all here, it's protected. Okay, and then your spinal cord, your spinal cord's protected by the spinal bones. Your brain is protected by this whole thing over here, your cranium and your facial muscles, so your skull. All right? So you also have the bone marrow, and the bone marrow is found in the long bones. So your major long bone is your femur, and it runs from your hip all the way to your knee. Come on, we've done all of this. Now, when we look at the femur, in the femur we have red and yellow bone marrow, and it's that red bone marrow that produces our blood cells. And, I put it there. All right, so just to check our diagram here, something that I'd like to show you is this little cavity. So the round structure here, inside that round structure you have the osteocyte. So there is your osteocyte. All right, this cavity here is the lacuna. All right, and if there are lots, it's lacunae, so you add an E on the end. All right, now, if we look at all these, what's important are all these little lines here. Okay, I don't know if you can, let me use a different color. Let's go with nice bright blue. And we go, now what is it doing? It's linking the different osteocytes to each other. And it ends up making what we call little canals, and we call them, they're baby canals. Now, what is a baby? So let's write canal. Hang on, it's one I. Canaliculi. So they are little baby canals that helps to link the osteocytes to each other so that there is a form of communication, and also to make sure that it's distributing the gases and the nutrients and removing wastes from each of them. So it's almost like a whole bunch of little canalways between everything. And then this structure right in the middle here, and I'm going to make one of them here, the black one's white, that structure is very, very, very special, and I think I'm going to just use this very wide, bright green one here. That structure in the middle, and this red line over here is also the label line to it. It's called the Haversian canal. And that Haversian canal is quite a large canal, and in there you're going to find a baby artery, an arterial, and a venial, a baby vein, and a nerve. And that is why it hurts like whoa when you break a bone. All right, if we didn't have the nerves and things there, well, it'll be okay, fine. Oops, let me just quickly break my bone. Doesn't work that way. Right, it is very, 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 very awesomely painful to break a bone. Okay, Indy, questions?
No questions as of yet. Let me have a look. Okay. Does the adipose tissue contain fat?
Does the adipose tissue contain fat?
And that one's from Toomey.
Okay.
Toomey's wondering.
To me, adipose tissue is fat. All right. Adipose tissue is the layer here, just underneath the skin, where the fat cells are deposited, and that is what gives you that wonderful, dimply orange peel skin when you're a little bit overweight. All right? How to fix it? And here's a little bit of my Oma's advice, is if you have orange peel dimples and your adipose tissue is here, you take a piece of cucumber, and after you've bathed, you take that cucumber and you rub and you rub and you rub and you rub, and there's something in the cucumber that gets absorbed into the skin, but also it's the rubbing action that instead of the adipose tissue looking bubbly like this, okay, what you're doing is you're rubbing it so that it goes nicely flat. And you actually, with all that rubbing, you're dispersing those little fat cells nicely in your adipose tissue. But we all need some adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is good. And in winter, we need an extra layer of adipose tissue because it's insulation. It keeps us warm. Any
Fantastic.
others?
Yes, we do. Okay, so this one, let me have a look. Are the cells of the connective tissue far or near to the others? And that one's from Tishiamo. And I got your name wrong again, I know it.
Connective, I'm just trying to understand. What are you saying? Is that the cells, the actual cells that form part of connective tissue, that they're spaced far away? No, they're not. They're actually spaced very closely together. For example, with your white tissue and your yellow elastic tissue, you've got fibers and things that are all in between to strengthen and supply. Remember the diagrams we're doing here, we draw them the way we do. They're not drawn to scale. They're drawn so that you can see the different structures that make up the tissue. It's only really blood, which I know a lot of learners tend to battle with because they say, hold on, you know, how does blood become called tissue, and how does it fall into the category of connective tissue? That's why I said to you, think of blood as connecting all the parts of the body together. But if you also think about it, what does blood have in it? It has your hemocrits, and your hemocrits are your white blood cells or your leukocytes, your red blood cells or your erythrocytes, and then you have your thrombocytes or your what we call our blood platelets. And what's their job? It's to block up any hole and prevent the cells from leaving. So it connects the holes together, or connects the walls together so that there is no bleeding out. Okay, so that's another way of thinking of it. Blood is part of connective tissue. All right, but not because the cells are spaced apart. The cells are all together.
Fantastic, Kathy. Okay, now, so this one, this is obviously something that a few people are wondering. Zuki and Tyrone's wants to know, what is matrix that's found in the bone?
Matrix is a mush. So you must remember, come on, you've all seen the movie The Matrix, and The Matrix 1 and 2 and 3. I think they got to Matrix like 5 or 6 or 8
500.
or something. Yeah. Okay. A matrix just means a mush. It's the network and the structures. So your matrix would be formed by the lamella, which are the membranes. Okay, and within those membranes, you're going to have your lacuna with the osteocytes, the little cells in it, and then your little caniculi, which connect the different osteocytes together. And all of that together forms the matrix. It would be like your house and all the roads and the streets and the houses around you and the shopping center down the road and the Pick and Pay, whatever, all of those form the matrix of the area that you live. So matrix is just all the cells together. Right.
Okay.
And I think we must be heading towards like almost cut-off time.
I think we've actually got a minute left, so I think I can ask one more question.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, this is completely off the topic, but I know you're going to have. This is from Mbuso, and he always shouts at me when I don't answer his questions on Twitter. Mbuso, just so you
Mbuso,
don't shout at me.
You've got my undivided attention for 1 minute. Quickly,
Okay,
come
1
Indy.
minute. I'm curious. Does the human nose have a cartilage? I know the answer, but you tell
Of course
him.
it does. This is hyaline cartilage. It bends very nicely, and it's right here on the tip of your nose. If you feel, you put your finger here, you'll feel that it's hard. That's the bone. And then this wiggly woggly piece at the bottom here, and I can see even Indy's doing it. That wiggly woggly piece is your cartilage. All right. And that's why one of your best defensive methods or defense mechanisms is to take the palm of your hand. And if you're right or left hand, it doesn't matter. You make sure you're ambidextrous at that point. Anybody attacks you, male, female, anybody, you take this part of your hand and you just whack them here, up into their nose there. And what it does is it takes the bone and it shoves it into their brain. End of story, end of attack. So the cartilage doesn't even get in the way, it just moves up. Right.
Well, there you go, guys. There's some defense lessons just for you for the end of our show, which is fantastic. Grade 11s, don't forget that you are next. Grade 10s, we had such a fantastic show. Keep those questions coming.
Definitely.
And also, Kakleho is on next. She is a new presenter. We're adding to Team Mindsets. Team Mindset is growing. Yeah. So, guys, that's us for now. Grade 10s, we had a fantastic lesson. Grade 11s, we'll be seeing you next. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.